to another episode of I Guess I'll Do It with Pat House. Today, I have a guest I'm very excited to have. We've worked together many times over the years. Accolades forever. Last Comic Standing, Tosh.0, Jimmy Kimmel, author of the Todd Glass Situation. Today, I have Todd Glass. Todd, thank you for being here.
I forgot my Netflix special.
He has a Netflix special called Act Happy. So, again, Todd Glass, thank you for being here.
How you doing, Pat?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. How many Jägermeisters do you think we've shared in Philadelphia?
That's the first fucking thing I have written on my notes here. And also, ta-da, got the little airplane bottle right here. All right, since you opened with it, I'm just going to roll with it. Do you remember the night you and I, it was at the Philly Helium in between shows, we did a Jaeger shot. Brad was bartending, and then you said, all right, let's do one more. So we did back-to-back Jaegers, and then you said, all right, one more. And then we did 3 shots of Jaeger in under a minute, and we were both fucked up for the late show.
Yeah, those days. You know, I long time ago, if I want to have fun for the rest of my career, I got it in certain incidences. And I can get buzzed and still have a really good show. But there's a line that I crossed a few times over the years, and I put that to a halt because sometimes. But on the fun nights, you know, it's weird. I know that I can have, if I have 4 or less drinks, I can have 4 drinks before a show does nothing. Now, does that mean the 5th drink ruins my show? Probably not, but that's where it starts. So why not stop it there?
That was the first and only time in my entire life I think I did 3 shots in under a minute. Yeah,
sometimes you just, I don't know, it just gets you in a different mood, you know, and then you're all, but anyway, the only reason it's funny, that story before the pandemic, I would have just been saying, oh my God, and remember, I forgot my material. But I was literally saying to my brother the other day, I think one of the good things that's going to come out of this pandemic is, it's not that I didn't try already, but I want to hit the pavement tight as fuck.
Yes.
I'm going over my act. I'm really just want to go out back on the road and just tighten it up. Doesn't mean I can't do what I want, but I still have to tighten it up. So that.
Do you have any 2021 dates on the calendar, or are you still feeling how the rest of the year is going to pan out?
I'm still waiting. I just want to do it when it's
correctly, responsibly, and
yeah. But I'm excited.
Shit.
I'm excited. You know.
Well, I'm excited to have you here today because there's so many little couple things I want to cover here. But I want to start off by saying I love how much you love stand-up comedy, the way you treat the audience, the room, the wait staff. And, you know, you talk about it on stage and you mentioned it in your book, but I love the way you just revere the whole entire art of stand-up comedy in general. I've always admired that about you. And even when I go to like some comedy clubs, I find myself thinking, what would Todd Glass do in this room? Yeah. Like, would he ask for better lighting? Would he move these chairs? Because you did something one time that stayed with me. It was at the Philly Helium again. And by the green room door, there's a high top table. And next to that high top table was a stack of chairs. And then you moved those chairs to the back and you said, you don't want people to ever think they're storage. And that always stuck with me. That, Todd, this was probably 10 years ago. That has stuck with me. You always want the crowd to be part of the showroom and be part of the show and not sitting next to a pile of junk in the showroom.
Yeah, it's funny because all those things some I learned, maybe I heard someone else say it, but I think somewhere along the line I heard someone say there were stacked up chairs in the back of a room, which is nice that when they want to thin out maybe the room a little because it's not as crowded. That's nice, but that's good. But they go, oh, the audience is in a storage closet. No, nobody wants to sit. Nobody asks for that. So same thing in the green room. I always tell a club when they're getting ready to do the show, one little thing. I go, this is minute, but the green room is not a storage closet. And they always go, oh yeah, of course not. But I go, but I'm going to give you a little mantra to help that never start because it doesn't start by putting 20 things in there. I'm sure. I told Mark and Helium, it starts with a vacuum in the corner. And he goes, you know, it's funny because if you didn't tell it to me that way, I wouldn't have noticed the vacuum. But one day after being open 8 months, I saw a vacuum and I went, there's what Todd was talking about. Next is a case of water, you know? So, yeah, just go hide it.
I always joke with myself and other comics, like, you can tell when Todd Glass was in the club the week before you because there's still gels in the lights, maybe a candle or like a rug in the bathroom. I love it. I love it. It's extra added touches that really make the experience so much better, make the green room more homier, make it more relaxing. So I've always admired that about you. So thank you for passing that on to me.
Well, you're welcome. I do. Maybe it comes from, I don't know. I do remember going to comedy shows for a short period before I did comedy, and specifically not in an arena, but in a comedy club. Often at a bad club, I was sitting near a bar or I would be near noise, and that drove me nuts. I can tell you specifically what I thought when I went to the first club, and it was a great club. But if it's not, you had to sit in the back. I'd be bummed at that because I really like to sit close. Mm-hmm. But you had to sit in the back, but there was no noise, and it was a dead wall behind you, and it was just you. Okay, but often in the back of the comedy club means you're near a door, or you're near a door that goes out to the tickets, or you're near a kitchen, and that's what I hated. It's like I'm already in the back, but do I have to be near this noise? So when doing comedy and presenting it, I'm always, what do people not want? Try to make this whole experience from the second they get into the club, the music they hear as they're being seated. And it's fun. I enjoy the process. So it's not work to me. I like it. I
know. And I've noticed that too, that you're also hands-on. Like, you're not asking the staff to do stuff. You get to the club a couple hours earlier and you do it yourself.
I do. And that's sort of why I still like working A rooms. When I say that, because I'm not saying all the clubs that I work are perfect, but they're really good. And they're not restaurants that present comedy. They're comedy clubs that sometimes happen to have food. And when you go to a club like that that's run properly, I like working at comedy clubs because I go in on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, get it the way I like it, and then walk into that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that's the most relaxing thing, to be in the city, settled at the club, and then go from the hotel to the club, to the hotel to the club, knowing that every night. By the way, when I'm in a well-run club like Philadelphia, I may as well mention it because, that's what we're talking about. There are other clubs besides Philly that do what I'm talking about, but we're talking about Philly. A well-run club, even with when the crowd might be a few hecklers or not the best, it doesn't scare me because I know that it's going to be run the best it can possibly be run. And it doesn't scare me when the club's handling it right.
No, dude, I love it. And I also, you were the first comic I saw too do their own pre-show announcements, which I thought was cool because you talked, you told them what the night was going to, what the whole experience was going to be. And you mentioned no talking. And I loved watching you call people out, be like, all right, the lady in the red sweater, could you please sit down and stop talking? And then you see if they're paying attention. So I loved watching you do stuff like that. And even one time we were at Helium together before you brought me out, you just said a collective shut the fuck up to the entire room. And they did. And that's just beautiful. So I think it's cool that you get your own show off by yourself.
Yeah, I do it. I do it with warmth because I don't. I say this probably out of my own parents. There's a difference between strict and a soup Nazi. I want them to feel welcome, and that's why the first thing I do when I make the announcement, I always go, "Hey, let's do the most important thing: welcome you here." Because there's people sitting there. They hear that announcement, and every word of it matters. It's not like turn your cell phones off in your laughter. They're not even going to listen to the announcement. You have to connect with them.
Yeah.
And if you explain why and you go impatient, it's not going to eliminate any really, really, really trouble tables, but it will make everything a little bit better. And I like to tell them exactly, and warn them. And then, and just say, here's what's going to happen. And if a doorman, the one thing that I always like to tell them is, hey, in the event that a doorman or a door person has to come over and tell you to maybe be quiet, that's not the end of the world. They're not mad at you. You're probably having fun. They're glad you're having fun. It's just a little reminder. And when they tell you that, all you got to do is look back at them and go, okay, cool. Don't take it as butting heads or you're being. So when that happens, and then sometimes now when that happens, it prevents that from happening. They go, oh, this is what he's talking about. Am I going to be like, just because the doorman told me to, maybe shush? And they never go over and go, shut the fuck up. Most well-run comedy clubs.
Oh, yeah.
They're pretty cool, especially the first and second time. They're always like, hey, come on, try to, no heckling. They're nice. By the third time, I always tell them, yeah, there's no third time.
Do you find that crowds are more behaved when you do your own announcements as opposed to just someone in the, just some random employee in the sound booth?
I always say this, you can't, if a club's got just the worst, they train their audiences. I've talked about this many times. Every club trains their audience directly or indirectly, and it's whatever they'll put up with. When you went to Philadelphia the first year versus the third year, it was a noticeable difference.
Oh God, yeah. The crowds were conditioned and trained, groomed, if you will.
Yes, and it can be done respectfully. What do you put up with? The less you put up with, the less shit you're going to get. It takes a little while. I get it. It doesn't happen overnight. So if it's sort of a well-run club already, then with my announcement, I see a major, major help with the announcement. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. I mean, I'm going to be able to talk if it didn't make a big difference. But when you stop, you don't just do it. Well, some clubs will make an announcement. Well, 70% of the crowd's listening. That's a lot of people listening. But me, it's shh, come on, bring it down, everybody. Bring it down. Because you know what? I get why people do other things, like maybe play loud music. Everybody thinks that they're trying to get the room ready for comedy. I get it. Even the clubs that do it like I don't like it, not the ones I work anymore, they're doing what they think I'm doing. They're just trying to do it, get the crowd ready. It's just the confusion comes, what do they think it takes to get the crowd ready? And to me, it's a semblance. It's, it is, believe it or not, quiet down. Let's reset. We're glad to have you here. It's going to be a great show. I always say this. I go, you can look at your clock and see we're starting late. But don't worry, we'll go late. We just wanted to start with a seated room. And other than that, after I do all the announcements, other than that, again, we're glad you're here. And it's showtime. Yeah, it settles them. And then you bring up the first act with not a stupid enthusiasm, and now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage. Always a treat to have them. Chip, you pick it up a little.
Yeah.
But it's bring them down.
No, it's something I've always liked that you've done, and I've just watching you, working with you on the show, or whether I was there to hang out and you were on, I just enjoyed watching you take over the whole experience of the room because I saw what you were doing, and from just years and years ago, I always noticed that with you.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you saying that. I do. It's something I talk about a lot, but in short, just thank you for noticing it. I appreciate it.
Oh, God, no problem. So, all right, you and I are both from the Philly suburbs, and years ago, I read your book. It's fantastic, and I thumbed through it again today. And you, along with Blake Wexler and myself, all started as teenagers, correct?
Yeah, I 16.
Okay, Blake was 15, you were 16, I was 19. And in your book, you said you became interested in comedy through your father, and you guys would watch TV and whatnot, funny movies and funny TV shows and stuff. That was kind of the first catalyst to get your wheels turning.
Yeah, I definitely, like a lot of comedians, definitely like stand-up. And at that point, you would watch it they had afternoon talk shows then. And I think there were at 4:00, there was 3 talk shows in the afternoon. A lot of those came back a little with Ellen DeGeneres and Rosie O'Donnell, but back when I was 13, 12, every 3 networks all had and the legends I liked, I would watch George Carlin or Don Rickles or Rodney Dangerfield. And then at the club, and then the newer comics, like the young guys, I would notice starting to come up, doing it just a set. They weren't like Rodney or, Don Rickles yet, but we're like Jay Leno. I remember he was always on those shows, and Jerry Seinfeld and people like that. And I definitely like stand-up.
You wrote one thing in your book, and I actually wrote it down today, so I'm going to read it back and quote you directly because it's from your book. You said comedy was something I could relate to. Even if I didn't understand everything the performers were saying, I liked the way they were saying it. It was a way of communicating that resonated with me. And I agree with that 100%. My dad would watch Leto and Letterman and Comic Relief when I was a kid. And I'm a kid. I'm a small child. I have no idea what they're saying, but something about it just stood out immediately at 5 or 6 years old.
Oh, even that young. Yeah, it's a rhythm. It's funny that I specifically remember that. A few comedians I didn't really know. I would ask later, what did that mean? But I understood some of it. But Pat, I remember cleanly, because we always talk about comedy But when you said on the phone, like, you know, that first time, I mean, I think we all remember it. But even before I went up, I distinctly remember I didn't even know what a comedy club was. I knew what going to see someone at the Valley Forge Music Fair open for like a singer, that would happen.
Yep.
And I knew that they were on television, but I didn't think they worked. And my friend Albert told me, he goes, they're going to a comedy club. And I thought it was going to be like college students telling jokes, you know, like because they're not obviously. And I didn't realize there were all these comedians that weren't big household names yet. But, you know, and we went to the Comedy Works and holy shit, it was amazing.
Yeah, that's so funny. You didn't even know. See, I came up where I knew what comedy clubs were because it was early 2000s. Right. But you were at a time where you didn't know there was a place specifically for this art, just this art by itself.
No, like, and you know, in music, it's the same thing. Like, you might, like, when my friend takes me to see a musician that's not like big, like the average person doesn't know who they are, but I go see them at a place that holds 350 people. I think, all right, this is probably like when I first saw comedy, to work at this place, even if I don't know who the musicians are, but you see the way the show's starting, and, you know, most people, it's not, you know, it's about the music, and there's 300 people there. You go, okay, this musician must have somewhat of a draw. And I learned with comedy, it was the same thing. Like, I didn't know who they were. Sometimes we knew who they were. We'd be like, oh, we saw that guy Make Me Laugh, or, oh, a special event would be a comedian. But 75% of the time back then, we didn't know who they were unless we had seen them there 2 months before or a year before when I started going a lot. But I mean, it was like, I saw everybody there. We saw Eddie Murphy in the early stages of doing stand-up. We saw Jerry Seinfeld, Jay Leno, Gary Shandling, Richard Lewis, Gilbert Godfrey, Stephen Wright, Dennis Miller. The list just goes on. And I loved it.
I love, this is like my favorite thing to talk about. Like, you know, people talk about how great it was to live through like Beatlemania and the British invasion, and that's cool and all, but I wish I was around when these acts were doing comedy clubs. Like, that's, for me, that's the correlation. I wish I was able to see Gary Shandling and Stephen Wright in a club.
You know what, though? Always take that adage that you're saying and apply it to the present, because I was talking to, on my podcast, there's a younger comedian, his name is Max Beasley, and he said something, you know, just out of the side of his mouth while we were talking, but he goes, because I think there's a lot of those things going on now in LA, like being a part of the you know, whether it's the UCB comedy over the years or the Meltdown when they had comedy. And I said, you don't know what you're living through until later. So you really, but with that perspective, you can sort of now come back to the present and go, oh yeah, I bet in 20 years that will seem cool. Because when it didn't seem, I mean, I was loving the comedy, but it didn't seem like, oh, I'm going to remember this years later. You just, you know, excuse me, I'm going to take my jacket off.
Yeah.
But I knew that I loved it. I knew that I would want to get there early, Pat. I would like, I was in high school still, because
I know I'm going to come back to that part in a second, but go ahead, keep going.
No, I would make my friends be ready. Like, well, I'm going to pick you up. I wanted to give myself an hour and a half to get into Center City. It could take as little as a half an hour, but I gave myself an hour and a half because I wanted to sit like so close to the stage. And I just went every week. And you know what? At an A room that happens to have good comedy. I should say that. I mean, it's amazing how once in a while there'd be a headliner I didn't like, but mostly it was just great. It was great. Yeah.
So which headliners did you really like at the time? Like before you even stepped foot on a stage, which comics did you love to see live?
Well, I didn't really go see anybody live, except did I see anybody? I saw a few people open for singers when I worked at the Valley Forge Music Fair when I was like 15, seating people. But on TV, I liked. Well, we would watch Make Me Laugh.
Mm-hmm.
So you said at clubs, or can I answer on TV?
Oh, both. Just stand up in general.
On TV, definitely like Gary Shandling. I remember liking him on Make Me Laugh, and you know, I would like, I wasn't a fan of Jay Leno on the Tonight Show. It just didn't grab me. It wasn't, but Jay Leno doing stand-up was, I mean, it was, if you could learn one thing from watching that, it's like having a tight set. Like, it didn't seem tight. It didn't seem stiff, but he went out, boom, 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 and he did his job every night. But other comedians, when I would go seeing comedy, I guess in hindsight, I like some of the guys that played with the conventions of stand-up, like Gilbert Gottfried. Me and my friends in high school, we couldn't contain ourselves.
Yeah.
It was just too, and the people around us, I know we weren't stupid. I remember driving home after seeing Gilbert Gottfried, and we thought we were smart enough to go in the car, driving home, me, Jim Madden, Dave Olson. Yeah, the people next to us thought we were just laughing like, oh, they don't think this is fun. Then like, no, like we got it. Like we got the absurdity of it.
Yeah, you were laughing. You were actually enjoying it.
It was, well, I see why they weren't. I get why they weren't, But absurdity always really made me laugh. And, hey, when I saw David Brenner, for the first time live, I did see him live at the Valley Forge Music Fair with my brother. And, it was, because it was, comedy just gets more and more real. And that's usually when you hear a comedian say comedy's not what it used to be. Yeah, I have a million theories, but one of them is it's getting more real. And if you don't grow as a comic, and that doesn't mean grow, you have to be social or political. If you have a silly act, if you're a silly act, doesn't mean it can't grow and hit new depths of silliness and test the waters in silliness or a bit you thought was too silly to do. But if you don't grow as a person, you're not going to grow as a comic. So I think growth scares everybody. It scares me, but it will prevent you from becoming a better comic. And then all you're going to do is miss the old days because you're not taking part of the new days. So blah, 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 blah.
No, that's true, because I find myself growing as a comic right now. In the past couple of years, I'm starting to tell some longer stories and get a little more personal, but I wasn't ready to do that 5 years ago. So it's all part of growing, and I'm having more fun now.
You should.
Each new level is getting more fun.
Good. I'm happy to hear that, because that's, when I see new comedians there's obviously older comedians that inspire me, but I see new younger comedians that inspire me. And when you're inspired by someone, it means you can grow. I watched so many years of comedians kiss goodbye the new thing. They're like, write it off. And they were young. I watched guys at 38 years old going, I guess this is what you have to do now to be. And now they're older than that. But even at 38, I'm like, now looking back, because they were hitting 40. So they were thinking, oh, now I'm 40. But yeah, you have to, I've seen them just, when you're mocking what's new, you're done.
You're prohibiting yourself. You're limiting yourself.
You're limiting yourself. And if you have a big enough audience, hey, if you mock what's new, but you can fill theaters every night, you don't have to worry about it. But if you're still at the clubs and you're starting to mock everything that's new, at best you're going to end up miserable, even if you're right. So I try to also have younger comedians. When I saw Rory Scovel for the first time, it made me want to tap into a silliness that maybe I didn't bring to the table.
Oh my God. Great example. Him and Rory Scovel and John Doerr. I mean, fucking
John Doerr.
Oh, dude.
John Doerr.
Dude.
Yes.
And them two together.
It's a lot. Before I did stand up, I always liked watching the stand-ups mess around. Like I would go to the club and see if they were, and that was to me the favorite time. Comedians, I would see them eating or out. When we went out at night, we'd see them, at a restaurant, and they were in the corner at the table. And it was as good as I thought it would be. Like hanging out with John Doerr and hanging out with Rory Scovel and these comedians. It's pure joy for me. There's nothing more on the planet than I like more to hang out with. I did a tour with John Doerr a few years ago through Canada, and it's just stupid fun.
Well, that's the best. And that's kind of, I mean, the pandemic was a big part of it, but part of the reason why I have this podcast is because in absence of hanging out at comedy clubs and shooting the shit in the green room, that's where this podcast comes in. Because if you and I were together right now in Buffalo or Portland, we would be having this conversation in the green room right now.
Right. And it's always, you're with you're with other people that you think like, and you're having a good time. And overwhelmingly, I like comedians. I think they're pretty decent. I think they're decent. They might have their problems and everything like that, but I think overwhelmingly, it's a nurturing. I'm sure there's negativity too, of course, but I think there's plenty of nurturing going on too, and I like that.
No, it absolutely. It's very cliche to say. I mean, like, I had friends growing up. I had very good friends, and I was in a band with some people, and I played guitar, and I was a musician. But when I was a couple months into comedy and started to make comedy friends, that was the turning point where I was like, oh my God, these are my people. Like, I've never. I was only 19, 20. I'm still young, but you just know, you're like, this is where I belong. I like them. They're like me. We have a lot of the same similarities. Like, when I got my groove a little bit in stand-up, I was like, well, I found home.
I'm so with you on that detail, because I had the same realization. And I started to have friends in high school. They were the ones that were going down to watch comedy before I did it. And they're still dear friends of mine. But when I started hanging out after the shows and meeting comedians, I was like, same thing. I thought, this is what it's like to meet people. Maybe some people do it through sports. Maybe other people do it through some other hobby they have.
Yeah.
But going out, that's why I whenever I give advice, if it comes out sideways while hanging out, I try to give tangible advice, not to you, but to like a newer, very new comedian, maybe even 7 months in. I go, there's going to be nights where you have a really bad set and you're going to want to go home. And I want it to be tangible advice. So I always say, and you know what? Sometimes you're just going to go home. I get it. When I would do the same thing. If I had a bad set, hey, you going out with us tonight, Todd? I'm going to go home. I wasn't crying, but I was, in a funk,
Yeah, you're in your own head and you just kind of want to process that alone.
Yeah. But sometimes I say get past it, because you're going to learn that not only is the part of comedy and growing being on stage, and that's an important part of it. And when you do bad on stage, it's not fun. But when you go out with these group of comedians afterwards, especially now that people have, it could have been years ago where people do Vines, or they do their, they have an Instagram, or they tweet, or they do little videos, and you meet other comedians hanging out. And the way you do those things together is you go out with someone after the show and you have fun and you're laughing. And so it's like, I used to say my on-stage set went shitty last night, but when I would go out with the comedians afterwards, one time I had a bad set, but I still went out. And you know what? About 40 minutes later or 30 or whatever, I forgot about the set.
It's out the window.
And I went home because the comedian, maybe he's been doing it for 3 years and I'd only been doing it for 6 months, but I genuinely made him spit food out of his mouth hanging out at the bar. And I liked him and I thought he was funny. Okay, I didn't do it on stage, but I did it off stage. And I started to go out after my shows weren't great. And I'm really glad that I did that, because it was the best. It was really good for me to start doing that.
Well, that's great advice. And it takes time to get over that too, because when you're brand new and you have some rough sets, it's soul crushing. But then after a while, you're like, fuck those people. These jokes work. That was the only dud this week. So but that does take time. So
it does take time.
And then it's all like incremental. Like, okay, you have a bad open mic set. Then you have a bad hosting set. Then that happens again. Then you have a couple really rough like feature sets. So it's like you just learn to deal with the shit as you just truck along. And then you care. I mean, you still care, but you care less and less. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of course you care, but it doesn't like hang on your emotions to where you're like all hum ho. You're like, all right, fuck those people. It's done.
It doesn't crush you as much.
Okay, so you're 16, right? And in your book, you said did you go to you mentioned the Comedy Works as where you started, and you saw shows for a couple of weeks or a couple of months before you got on stage?
I would go, everything gets a little mushy after a while. I think I started to go, I know. I wasn't 16 yet when I was starting to go see the shows. That's why I had to get another friend in the beginning to drive. And I went and, wait, what did you ask me?
If you went to the Comedy Works for to watch some shows before you did your first set. That's basically
yes.
It.
Oh,
Okay.
That's right. I went to watch some shows. They only had shows, 2 shows Friday, 2 shows Saturday. That's the way that club run. And sometimes I would go to both shows. And then, you hear them say every week before they would like maybe bring up the middle. Hey, don't forget Wednesdays are open mic night. If you think you're funny, you get 3 minutes. Quick thing. If you want to know more about it, ask, blah, 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 blah. And I heard that. And finally, I went 1 week and didn't perform. I went, signed up, got on. I chickened out.
Okay.
Yeah, with some high school friends with me. And then they didn't want to go back because they go, well, are you definitely going to go on? And I said, yeah. And the second time I went back, like a week, I think the next week, my brother went with me that time because he was going to Temple University. So he went with me. He took me over. He was very supportive. All my family was very supportive. But Spencer lived in the city because he was going to Temple. And he was really supportive. And
That's
he went
great.
with me. What?
I said that's great. My family's been supportive since day one. So hearing that just makes me happy because that's awesome. That's all.
It's something that I maybe didn't realize then, but of course now I do. We went, and the first time I went up, which happens a lot, I'm not boasting, probably my age, you look young and they say it's your first time. So first time I did fucking great.
So did I.
I got off stage and everyone was so warm and so supportive. I remember one person lovingly, another comedian goes, "You're good. You'll learn to hone your energy a little and focus in." And then legendary Wid goes, "You don't got to hone anything. Just go crazy, baby." It's like, and that was his way to.
I have that written down right here.
I love it.
What Wid said to you. I have that written down right here. Was Wid the host that night?
Wid was the host of the open mic night because you actually had to be an established, better comedian, which was smart of them because hosting is a hard job. So, and I think you get paid to host. You did. You got paid to host.
Okay. So what I'm getting at, my next question. So Wid was the first comic to ever bring you to the stage.
Yeah.
Me too.
Oh,
Me too. At the Laugh House in October 2004.
Wid is a Philadelphia institution.
He
right?
is, and you know what? I got to get him on this podcast. I don't even know what his first set was like or what got him into it, but I guarantee you it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, he really is. He's great, and he's an artist, and he's a comedian, and it's like whenever I go back to Philly and the newer comedians know who he is, I'm going, good, you should.
Absolutely.
But he was very supportive. And then, I'm sure we'll go back to any details you want, but I will tell you this because at that point, my memory is I never stopped. After that, I went up. I might have not done 1 week, maybe, but pretty much when I went up that second time and I performed, I went the next week. A lot of my family went, and I didn't do good at all.
Oh, okay. We're going to come back to that then.
Yeah, I didn't invite anybody after that for a long time.
All right, so the first set went very well, and then the second set you told people and it did not go well?
Didn't go well at all.
Oh, man, as a comic, you just feel that. Like, you feel that in your chest and your stomach because you know what that's like. But that, like you said, that's very common. My first 2 sets went well, and then my next, like, fucking 10 or 12 did not. So, like, I saw what the top felt like, and then I didn't get that feeling again for like 3 more months.
Yeah, it's so funny that you could be doing it 3 years and have be making a living even, and then you have one set and you go, oh, should I not be doing comedy? Like, is this not my thing? And then you go up the week after and you go, what I started doing, Pat? Because if it was just the comedians, there were times to do the best of. I thought I had a good ratio of that. When is it time to do the best stuff? You know what I mean? Like your proven stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there were nights to do it. You got to prove to the owner, to the people around, let them see a tight set. Maybe someone that would bring you on the road. Maybe a comedian at your own level, but he books a college and he sees you do the best. And then there was a time not to do the best stuff, obviously. And so I always had a set list. I wrote it with big black Sharpie because I didn't want to be pulling it out of my pocket. I wanted to put it on the chair. And that way, when I'm done one bit, I glance down. I don't have to. And I started to divide it. On the back, I wrote, if it's just comics. Because if it's just comics doing the best of, they've all heard it.
Absolutely.
But if there's 4 audience members and 7 comedians, and you go up there and you do some new stuff, So I would I'd make that decision. I'd get out on stage, or before I went out on stage, and I'd put the opposite side down and do the new stuff.
I like that you say that too, because when you're doing open mics as a new comic, you scan the room because it is mostly comics. But then if you see two couples walk in off the street, you're like, well, I have an audience now. So now I have to do new stuff. That is so fucking relatable.
Yeah, it was just, I realized that if there was mostly comedians in the audience and I was going to do the best of, they'd seen it. So I was going to bomb, not because it wasn't funny, because they just heard it. And I was prepared. Like, normally it would be me thinking before I did that, okay, what's some new stuff? What's some new stuff? I was ready to go with a second set list on the back of my other one. And that would be all newer stuff, Did
you bring a set list on stage for a long time?
I brought a set list on stage for a long time. Again, I knew early on, for whatever reason, like, just make it big. So there's a professionalism about it.
Do you still do it now? Do you still do it?
Well, now I have a binder.
I've seen the binder.
I started doing that like maybe 5-6 years ago, and I never stopped. And the reason, now there's nights when I don't use the binder, but I use it.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, you have it on the music stand. That's right.
I have it on the music stand.
Okay, got you. We haven't.
So,
okay, yep.
Which is important because it's you raise it up high, it's tilted right at you, and I always I learned that I address it right up front when I get out there. I go, hey folks, you're going to see me looking through some of these notes. I don't stick to it like glue, but I do it because I'm all over the place and I get erratic, and this helps me have a beaten path. Don't worry, I go off of it. So now when I do this, because you might never seen a comedian do this before, now you're used, and then that gets it out of the way, and it really helps me and it calms me to just. Sometimes literally I don't get past page 3, and there's 20 pages in there because everything. But in the event that I need to, it's a beaten path, You know
what I saw one time that also sticks with me? And like, I remember everything about comedy. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, but like, I remember everything. The first time I ever saw Mark Maron, he came to Helium in Philly. WTF was not a thing yet. I didn't even know who Mark Maron was. I had no clue who he was, but he was headlining Helium. He comes out on stage and he has like a stack of notebooks, like 3, 4, 5 notebooks. And he puts them on the stool and he goes, I'm not going to look at these. I don't need them, but I just feel better knowing they're there. And I'm like, man, that's awesome. It's like comfort.
Yeah.
And then it's true. He didn't touch him. He didn't touch him. He didn't do anything with him. But I feel better knowing they're there. That, again, like your storage quote from earlier, that stuck with me. 12 years later.
Yeah, it's funny. I have the same thing. And it's like, I remember a comedian telling Steve Young, the owner of the Comedy Works, that they had long tables in the first row. Like right from the stage, there were tables that sat like 7 or 8 people, 4 and 4. And he said, put couples up front. There were tables of 4 that were further in the back. So he says, like, put couples in the front. I think it was Kip Adada, and then, I wasn't there when this happened. I heard the story, but hey, good for the owner. He flipped it, and it makes sense to this day. Even if I have the story a little wrong, it doesn't matter. Somebody figured that out. Couples are better up front because they're on better behavior. Tables of 4, the smaller tables up front, and then he flipped it. I always remember that. Like, why do I have to know that? Like, why do I remember?
So, okay, I want to tag along to your binder kind of thing. Take it in a writing direction. About 2 years ago, I was hanging out at your house. You invited me over. It was me, you, Jeremiah Watkins and stuff, but I got there first, and we're shooting the shit. We're talking comedy. And on your dining room wall, you had that giant wall, or a mirror maybe, covered in 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper. That's correct, right? I'm not going crazy, am I?
Yeah, no, you're not at all. Hold on, I'm getting something. When I'm ready to...
Because what I'm getting at is I've never seen that before. I was amazed by it, and I would love it if you walked me through your process there.
I'd love to. This is something I never really talk about, because you talk about comedy, but you always talk about the same thing, and then because you don't get into the nitty gritty of it. But on your show, that's all we talk about, so you can really get fine.
I know. And you know what? People like it. I get messages from people who are like, I love the little nuances I never thought about. And that's the exact shit I want to dig into.
Yeah, and it's the stuff that interests me too, about music. When I hear musicians talking about music, I don't have to know a lot about music, but oh, that's what they do. Oh, I never thought about that. Oh, cool,
Oh, they
But
plugged the guitar in. Look at that.
Hey, look, as far as technology goes, just so I'm really clear with it, maybe it's my own insecurities. Thank God for cell phones. They've changed my life with having ideas and being able to say them into the little recorder on your phone and just being able to write notes down. It's made my comedy much better. But sometimes just good old fashioned printing it out. So, everybody has a different comfortability of how much material to do new every year.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if I'm making this up. I'm being dreadfully honest because it happens to be at the speed that I write new material. So I'm going back and pretending. But if the best of my recollection, this has to do with why this is here. Recollection.
Tell me your recollection.
Recollection. What's it? How do you say the word?
Recollection?
Recollection. Jesus. Edit that out, you piece of shit. If I went and saw a comedian with my friends, this goes back to this stuff here that I just went and grabbed.
Cool.
If he had, I don't remember the percentage. Just percentages make it a little easier for you and the listening audience to understand. 40% new material. That's a big chunk of new material a year later.
Almost half a set.
It's not a new set, but 40%. It's not 10. It's not 20. It's a 40. We were happy. We'd be like, oh, he did some of them. He did a lot of the old stuff. They had like a big chunk of new stuff. So I'd like to believe if you come back to Philly a year later or a club, have I always met this? Maybe not. Maybe sometimes at my best I haven't. But I'd like to believe overwhelmingly. Now there might be people that say, oh, it depends what their standard of new material is. They might have come out to see me and go, yeah, he did a lot of the same stuff. But if they heard what I'm saying, they might go, well, he did do half new material. They just don't think that's enough. But if that's what I'd like to believe, that if you come see me a year later, you'll see a half new material. And you'll see half the same, but the half that's the same will be different too, because it just changes over the years.
Yes, they could see the same of half of the set, but it could be tighter, better, longer, better tags, or a different angle, or you could just find a completely different way to do the same thing.
Exactly. It's not like, I get it. Maybe the more, not that I spit on this type of comedy at all, because it's some of my favorite comedy where it's every word is well thought out, and then that might get a little more tiresome because it's the exact same, but like you just hit all the beats, like different bullet points, longer, that's going to happen. So when it's time to do that, it gets very difficult for me. And I have a friend of mine and he helps me with it. And I learned what I do is I put all the old set up on that mirror, all these things here.
Okay.
These pages that with big bullet points, and it's like, hold on. Yeah, it's like, there. That's what you saw up on the wall, right?
That is correct. Yeah. What was it? A mirror? Or was it the wall? Was it a mirror or a wall?
It was a mirror.
Okay, that's right. What I thought.
And then I put it up there, and then my friend Daniel Kino will come over, and we'll say when it's time to say goodbye to something. Maybe I go, look, this has been on my binder every night, and I never do it. You don't believe in it. Get rid of it. And then we put something else in there. And we just rebuild it on the wall, literally by printing out the new set. Sometimes I cut one half of a sheet because I go, I'll get rid of all these 3 jokes. Just cut it with scissors, print another thing out, stick it there. Because visually I can see it. And when I can see it up on the wall, I go, shit, that's 2 band bits in a row. So let me move this there. And that wall will stay like that usually for about 3 weeks. And so then I'll go...
Sorry, I'm cutting you off because you wouldn't keep the 2 band bits in a row with a segue, since you're on the same topic?
Sometimes I won't. I'll just want to not have 2 band bits in a row for some reason. Okay. Go back to some stand up, go back and forth, stand up, band bits, stand up,
Oh, you know what? That's funny. I wasn't even thinking about the band. I was thinking about like if you had 2 jokes about bands and why you would not want to keep those together. It had nothing to do with the music whatsoever.
Well, Pat, it's funny you say that because
you said band bits, and it would be like, okay, if you have two different vacuum cleaner bits, why would you not keep the two vacuum cleaner bits together? My mind went so far away thinking about how you had no connection there.
Right. Well, it's funny you say that because one of the things that my friend Daniel is able to do, or hey, when I'm in Philly, sometimes Chip Chanshire will help me. I call it chunking bits up. Sometimes I have bits that I don't realize, Todd, this bit and this bit and this bit, like one's here, one's there. They all go together. They're all about you being gluttonous. One's will you drive, one's will you eat. I go, oh, so having a fresh set of eyes, look at it. I call, even if we're not writing new material, because I don't really sit down and write jokes with people. I just need help with the ones I already have.
Yeah.
But I call it chunking it up. And Daniel has the amazing ability to like really help me look at that and then reorganize stuff. I'll keep it, but I'll reorganize it. And seeing it up on the wall makes it night and day for me to do.
I remember telling you that night when I saw the wall that I want to start doing it, but I haven't done it yet. But I have a lot of new stuff I like, and that's been on my mind a lot because I think I keep everything in notebooks because I love to handwrite a lot of stuff, but I think seeing everything together in larger print in one giant area might be a different way for my brain to look at it. Like just a whole different avenue, and maybe I'll see things I didn't even realize as I'm flipping through page after page where shit is scattered.
Yeah, it's same with me. It really helps to see it up there. And then also, I'll tell you what else it helps me. Once it's up there, as much as most of my stuff is, in my computer or in my phone, if I think of a joke while I'm hanging out in the living room and I go, oh, I don't have to open up a binder. I don't have to go into my bedroom. I will go right up to that board. I think of, oh, that's the word I should be using on the bit about blah, blah, blah. Who cares? You get what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I'll go up there with a Sharpie and write it down right there. Boom. Then at the end of the week, there's Sharpie everywhere. And then I will go in and clean it up and let me write that joke that way. Let me give that as an example. Let me use this city instead of that city. But there's just Sharpie everywhere. And if it's just a word or two, I'll be able to read it, so I don't mind using the Sharpie.
Do you have notebooks at all? Do you handwrite everything, or do you type all your stuff out right for the wall? Like what's your
everything?
If you have an idea,
what?
If you have an idea, what's the first way you tackle it?
If I have an idea, I'm trying not to maybe this is overtelling you, but I'll tell you my process. And I think some of it has to do with, maybe my dyslexia that I thought of this today when I was doing this thing and they needed me to sign. This will go back to what you're talking about.
Okay.
And they needed, hold on, I'm going to open the door here. I get worked up talking about comedy.
The jacket came off, the door's open.
Don't go anywhere. Da-da-da. Oh, can you see me okay when it's dark in here like this?
100%.
Okay.
Looks great.
The reason I do it like this is because, so anyway, someone was trying to tell me how to use the computer today. I went on this thing. Everything's in my phone. I've never used a computer. I have one for the show, for the podcast, and if people are helping me, I have a computer, but I don't use it. Everything is on my iPhone. So I was someone, they were trying to teach me how to sign this thing, and I go, oh, I'm real bad on the computer. But it's very hard to get people to explain, like, when I say bad, I mean, so she goes, oh, okay, and she showed me, and then she walked away. She goes, so when you're done, just send it. And I said to myself, not her, I said, what does she not get about I'm not good? And I get it, because most people are bad, but they can still maneuver around. And then I thought about it. Am I being lazy? And I thought to myself, this is just today, the best way to say it, it's not cost effective for me to be sweating over mundane things, like logging it in and making sure I spell it right. And then indentating it like I needed to, or make those words bigger. So it's not cost effective. It's not that I'm lazy, because I'd rather go sweep the yard. I know how to do that. I know how to do things. I'll do them. It's not above me. So what I do, I always have someone, it's like that I know, maybe it's someone that works on the podcast and they need a little extra money. And about 3 years ago, there was a kid that wrote me a letter and he wanted to just help out on the podcast. He was in college and he listened to the podcast. His name's Aaron Simon, loves stand-up comedy, goes out to see it all the time. So he is I would say, but he's I would say godsend if I believed in God, And so I have these ideas and I say them into my phone. But when I want to put them in the book now, because the pandemic, I just have them on the phone because I can speak. And I'll go, hey, Aaron, write the Cheesecake Factory, ... and then put that in all caps, okay? And then indentate that, and then do these next 3 lines in all caps, and put print, because I can just speak. And he's like, that's my process. I write notes into my phone, or voice memos. A lot of times, voice memos for me are the quickest, especially if I'm high.
Dude, okay, if you're high or if you're driving. Sometimes I'll be in the car and reach for my phone because I'm like, I don't know, bitch at Applebee's. But I know when I go home what that means, but I have to put it in the phone right away. So the voice memos are a fucking godsend.
Right, exactly. So I'll do I will do voice memos a lot. And then what I do is I call Aaron on my iPad and I listen to my voice memos. It's 3 words. But when I did learn that it helps to have a few more words on the page. Otherwise, I might forget the joke. But in the morning, I'll have it crystal clear. And then a week later, I'll have it crystal clear. I call Aaron. We work together for a while. And I'm like, Aaron, we're just going to put all these new jokes into the book. And because he's so good on the computer, verbally, I can explain the joke so much better. I won't be sloppy with what I write down because I'm exhausted of typing or doing it right. And I have good, clean, crisp notes that way. And that's the way I do it.
Okay. So it's safe to say your book was done that way?
Yeah, my book is everything in there, and it's neat and it's clean and it's and also I call them the road Bibles, like 2001 road Bible. I save them all because just so I want to look back at what Bible was I using in 2000, just to maybe there's a joke I did. Well, I'm going to bring that back, So I try to be pretty organized.
Have you been on your Wikipedia lately?
No, why?
Because, so for every episode, I know most of my guests. We're friends. We have a relationship. We've worked together. But I still do some research. I go to YouTube. I look at the website. I still do my work. And your Wikipedia just says he's Jewish and dyslexic.
Oh, my God. So somebody must have changed that.
Somebody must have. And I was like, man, the next time Todd and I are working together, I think that's going to be his intro.
He's Jewish. There's
a lot
of things.
There's a lot more on it. There's more on your page, but it said like the about section. It said that first, and I was like, okay, those are 2 very wildly descriptive, yes, but also 2 random things to just throw out there.
Yeah, I didn't put that on there. It might have been somebody might have chopped it up. It is true, and I do mention it in my book, but somebody might have just done something.
Is that why you signed my copy of your book on the back cover upside down, by any chance?
Oh, did I do that by accident?
Yeah, that may have been the Jaeger night, actually. The back-to-back-to-back Jaeger night. You wrote, now I didn't look at it. I handed you my book. You signed it, "Move to LA, you fuck." And then you handed it back to me. I opened the front cover, and it's not there. I'm like, Todd, you didn't sign my book. And you're like, yes, I did. I look at the back cover, and it was there. But then I had to flip the book upside down to read it.
Oh, God. Yeah, it must have been. Because I'm not that dyslexic. It must have been.
I love it. And back cover.
As I'm talking.
Back cover.
My God.
Back cover.
Wow,
Pat,
look at that.
Pat,
you were.
Hold on 1 second. So that's the back cover. Pat, moved to LA, you fuck, love Todd Glass. Upside down.
Jesus. Wow,
but so that makes it all the more better.
Yeah, that must have been the Jaeger because, again, I don't think I'm that dyslexic.
You said something in your book too. You said comedy clubs are like going to school. You talked about, high school wasn't your thing and college was out of the question. I did fine in high school and I went to college, but I was so into stand-up that anything else became secondary to stand up while in college. But you said comedy clubs is like going to school, and I could not agree with that more because you learn so much by just hanging in the back of the room watching. You don't have to say a word to anybody, but when you're brand new into comedy and you want to learn, just sitting in the back of the room night after night, weekend after weekend, you learn so fucking much.
Yeah, you really do. And it's, I don't do everything right in my life, but one thing that I have done right when it comes to comedy is I like hanging out with comedians. So when you're hanging out with comedians, it's fun, but the byproduct of that is you do learn a lot. You do learn a lot. And, I used to say the only thing you need to, now look, it changes as you're in the business more, but everything you need to learn in comedy, when some people get ahead of themselves, like their first year in comedy, they go, they're worried too much and I got to do this. And you just got to be funny. Just go up on stage every night and be funny. If there's something new going around that you can, if it's Vine or if it's Twitter or if it's an Instagram, hey, look, those are all great things for comedians to do to supplement their stand-up comedy and also keep in touch with an audience. That they're good for people that aren't comedians, but it doesn't have to be everything that comes along. It doesn't have to be Vine. It doesn't have to be the podcast. It doesn't have to be Instagram. It doesn't have to
helps.
be Twitter.
You're just reminding people, hey, I'm here with some funny shit.
Right. One of those things that comes along, should do it for you. And hold on. I used to say, though, like early in your career, just be funny. And I used to say, who knows everything you need to know about comedy? The person that's been doing it 2 more years than you.
Yep.
If they're nurturing, they have so much to offer you. I remember a comedian told me, simple advice, but good. When the crowd got louder, I would get louder. He goes, get lower. And the reason I like pieces of advice like that, because it works.
Yes, make the crowd come to you. I'm sure, I'm sure to tag on to what you just said, I'm sure you've been in a situation where you get lower and then somebody in the crowd tells you to get louder. Someone like heckles you or tells you should get louder. And you're like, no, you're coming to me.
Yeah.
Yep.
And usually they'll shush the people talking. If you get louder, they don't have to shush the table next to them. But if you get lower, I've seen that happen a lot, and I love it because it works instantly. The minute I get lower, the crowd, someone will tell the couple over in the corner, hey, shh, because now we can't hear him, and that is good. It's funny that I remember once following a comedian that had I'm pretty sure he had cerebral palsy, and you had to listen.
If it was Josh Blue, then yes.
It wasn't Josh Blue. It was before. It was like 25 years ago, and you had to really listen. The guy was really funny, but you had to listen. And I worked with him about 2 weeks in a row in Dallas. And by the end of the first week, me and the other comedian went, that's why they've been great crowds, because for a half an hour, they're taught to listen, not because someone tried to. And once they got into that rhythm, it worked. It's not like when I got out there, they decided, we can be loud again. No, they were listening. They had already reaped the benefits of it. And then I rode the wave. And that's sort of what I try to do for the opening act is getting the crowd to listen. That's what that pre-announcement is. When I'm only on the road with one act. I don't do 2 acts. When I send that out, and a lot of times it's someone that could be a headliner in their own right. They just happen to live in that city. So while I'm there, it's me and them, but they could be a headliner out when they're not in their hometown. Mm-hmm. And when I send them out to that stage, I want them to get to that mic like they're the star of the show. The lights come up and you just get to that mic and I hand you over a well-obedient audience. And all I ask is don't ask how they're doing. That's all I ask my opening acts to do. Don't ask how they're doing. Just walk out there like a pro, hit the mic, and get right into your first joke, just like you're the star of the show.
How you guys doing? You guys celebrating anything? Anniversary over here? Who has a birthday?
Oh, I get it. Sometimes you get nervous. For a newer comedian, I get that. Like why they go.
It can be a crutch and a distraction from your material if you're not confident or if you're brand new. I get it.
Or a joke doesn't work and it gets you your footing. So we're not picking on an act that might do that. You get rattled and you go to something like, hey, is everyone having a good time? But when you're doing it 10 years, just get to the mic and do your first joke.
one thing I've always admired about you too, and this goes hand in hand with, you setting up the green room in the club and, putting your own touch on the room for the weekend. Do you always go to town a day early for the open mic, or is that just a Philly thing because you're from here?
Well, I do like to go, it's like, and this is a good thing, because I really do like doing stand-up. So maybe this is too long of an answer for your question, but I don't have kids. I don't have a significant other right now. I'm not, and even when I was in a relationship, we had an amazing understanding. Like, he goes, if you're out for 3 weeks, we're going to be together the rest of our lives. Like, go have fun. It was guilt-free. And then I was home sometimes for 3 weeks in a row. But now I'm not in a relationship. And I really like to go to town a day early for two reasons. One, it's such a beautiful, more pleasant travel day.
Yes, it is.
I leave LA sometimes at 11:30. Now, even though I will go by the open mic night, you don't have to. So you don't think you will certain nights. But you know what? You get into the airport at 6:30. You're at the hotel at 7:30. And then it's 8:30 and you call over at the club. They go, yeah, open mic night's still going on if you want to go up at the end. And really what I like about going to the open mic night is hanging out with other comedians. Because, you might meet newer comedians that aren't doing it as long as you. So maybe they can't bring it on stage like you can. But off stage, you hang out with a 2-year comedian that has the sensibility you have. And you've been doing it 20 and they've only been doing it 2. Off stage, it's pure joy.
It's family. It's automatic.
And if you hang out at the Helium Bar and there's newer comedians, you're going to meet a new friend. And meeting new friends to me, that's one of the things I love most about stand-up comedy, that you get to meet new friends and it's fun to meet new friends. And I never want to stop doing that. So that's why I go into town a night early, and it's more relaxing.
Okay, because I remember following you one time at the Helium open mic, and it was a table of women. They were drunk and obnoxious, and which is crazy because it was a Tuesday, and they were in their 40s and 50s. And I know Blake Wexler told you this story because I talked about it when he was on my podcast. You know what I'm going to say? I can see you already start to laugh. You ran to their table and you pointed in this woman's face.
Don't use a word that I didn't use because I know my language and what I would have said.
You called her a cake smusher.
Oh, okay.
You called her. You said you're a cake smusher. You said people love cake. And this comedy show is cake, and you're smushing it. You're taking your hand and you're just smushing it.
Yeah, and I said, you're the reason. And then I added, I go, and you know what else? You're the reason that Mitch Hedberg killed himself.
You're the reason that Mitch Hedberg is dead. So
I said, yeah, because Mitch didn't kill himself. Mitch OD'd. But I said, you're the reason Mitch Hedberg OD'd, which of course I didn't believe. But I thought, I'm throwing all this stuff at them.
Dude, me and the comics were fucking losing our minds. So okay, with that being said, I've seen you, I don't want to use the phrase lose it, but I've seen you go off on some hecklers, and it's fun because it can be a cathartic release for us. Just 2 weeks ago, I had a beautiful shut the fuck up to a drunk woman in the front row, and it felt fucking great. But are there any hecklers that stand out to you that you still get heated when you think about this one time at this one club? Has anybody been derailed the show or tried to get in your head so much you still get worked up?
I'll start backwards with the answer. Even though I will go in a second here and defend sometimes when I do it, overwhelmingly as the years go on, I hope I have to have a different relationship with letting it get me as angry as it does. I have real disdain for anything that's not respectful to the show. Even when I go out to see a show, when I go out, I went to see a musician and we were at the bar. Now this guy's still at the point during his life where, not guy, she was still working a music venue where there was a bar in the room. But they were there to see her, but there was a bar. And this is only a year and a half ago. The couple next to me, they wouldn't shut up. And I was starting to get me goddamn mad. And finally, the bartender, even though it's a bar, he told them, guys, you got it. I was like, oh, thank God. And then when I tipped him, because this was not a big deal, I said, hey, thank you. And I tipped him $20. You know why? because I knew that then he would keep it up. And it was worth $20 for me for the next hour and a half to him to want to please me, not worry about them. And so it gets me very upset. Any disrespect for the performer. And by the way, when I was 16, 17, 18, 19, whatever it is, when I went out to see, if I was at a bar and there was a band playing, I remember being very young, not 16, obviously. But where if I didn't like the band, it's not wrong that they don't like your comedy. I understand that. I love everyone to love my comedy, but I get that. I don't love all comedy. Am I a bad person? But when we didn't like a band, or if we were like, let's go, I would tell my friends, like at a bar where there's a band, but we're in the first row, I would go, you two leave first, and then I'll follow. Basic dignity, respect. Like, they're not, just because we don't like what they're doing, they still deserve respect. So if I give it, I want to get it in return. Also, most of the time you get it. You have to know if what you're asking for is fair by how often does it happen. The positive thing is, especially at good comedy clubs, overwhelmingly, the audiences are amazing. Most crowds are really good, especially at a well-run comedy club. But my anger, I want to get more of a grip on it, because even if the crowd agrees with you, even if everybody, let's say one night, everybody agrees and you just go after a person, it still leaves a tension in the room.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And people were like, that guy fucking lost his mind for a minute there.
Yeah. Even if they agree, even if some of them go, it was cathartic. I'd like seeing that couple get yelled at. But here's what it is for me. It's when they're sitting in the first row, I try to ignore it. And I'm not asking them to smile. But what did I do? And I'll even go through my act. Did I do a social joke? Did I make fun of hitting kids, or did I make fun of declawing cats? I try to think, what did I do that maybe they're mad at? And if I think, I've only been out here. So then I purposely will go to not bad material, but material that I know is digestible. I like it, but it's gonna be, it's not too soon.
Yep, still good.
Are we back? It's not too silly. And then when they're sitting there, again, not pensive. I mean, to me, you don't have to be, but I'd settle for this. And it's not even that. Do you see my face?
I do. Yep.
Just pensive, just not an upside down frown, where I think to myself, oh, you're a bully. Now, as long as I don't use words, which I always regretted when I got in the car, if they were words that had nothing to do with why I was angry at that person. I'm not angry at them because of their weight. I'm not angry at them because of their sex. So those words that can fly out of your mouth, I don't like to use those words. I like to go in with pinpoint accuracy, say everything I just said to you to the crowd but if I always say this, if they're having a good time, if the people that I'm making fun of are having fun, I'm not. I want them to be scared and angry. I want them to be scared and angry. Now, I'm changing that, but when I see this and I break it down for the audience, I go, folks, in 1 minute, some people are going to think I'm the bully. But understand, I have been standing up on this stage for the last 20 minutes. I'm not kidding you. For the people that way in the back, I learned you have to explain what's happening to the whole crowd.
You do, because you become the asshole automatically, because to them in the back, you look like an attacker.
Right. So I'll go for 20 minutes. I've been up here. Folks, I'm not exaggerating. And they've been sitting there like this couple. Now, you can be a verbal bully. If you came up to me after the show, be honest, folks, and you were talking to me, and as you're talking to me, I'm there like this. You'd walk away and go, God, that comedian was a dick. And you'd be right. And I sort of can get the crowd all to come with me. But again, even on the nights when I do that, it's still, it's the hardest thing that I have to work on. It's not good for me. The thing that I also feel is that these clubs that do it right, I want to return the professionalism, and I haven't always done that. And it doesn't help them. It doesn't help the club. And if there's any way, if I have to deal with it, the best way I've learned is you have a signal with the club. Hey, these people are having fun over here. You have a key word and let them deal with it. And that's what I want to and am trying to control my temper, because when it comes out, it's bad.
So how bad was it 20 years ago?
It was always bad. It was always really bad. And again, not like, I mean, no, it's bad. It's bad. But it's better now. It's better. It's much better now. And I'm learning new ways to deal with it. And when I go off, I know when to stop. But you know what? Real quick, and I know I'm getting chatty on this one topic. Also, what I've done a few times is because I have the little band with me, I was in Atlanta one night and I said to the manager of the club, who's the great guy, the Laughing Skull, I said, listen, I think that group's going to be trouble. But a lot of times they're not. I'm not going out with a chip on my shoulder. A lot of times, you go out there, they're great. They're like, oh, they're great. But they were trouble.
But you can sometimes tell. You can sometimes tell these people let themselves be known.
Yeah, 2 minutes into my set, do you know what I did? I said, folks, is exactly what I did. I said, listen, I'm not in a bad mood. But some people would say, just plow through the set. But then you don't get the show you want. A lot of people spent money tonight to come out that they didn't even have. Some people might not get out of the house for another year. So I'm in a great mood because I remember this. I'm not mad. I'm going to walk off stage so those people can leave with dignity. Don't boo them when they're leaving. They're not having fun either, even though it's hard to. I'm even defending them to keep it as civil as I can. Let them leave. They're not having fun either. I get it. I mean, I think they're being rude, and the club will handle it. And then I'm going to come back, folks. And guess what? Seriously, we're going to have so much fun. And it's worth 2 minutes for this next hour and a half to go great. I'll be right back. The lights went out. The band played. They played. Because they don't have to get them out while a show is going on. They got them out of there within, I would say, 90 seconds. They got them out of the room. And guess what? They went, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage the band I have with me, Todd Glass. I did not expect this. The crowd was overwhelmed with joy. They were so appreciative of that. And then, one other quick thing. And at the end of the show, there was some podcast people there. It was so much fun. It worked. I was so proud of myself. I didn't yell. I didn't get angry. But I said a zero tolerance. And I bet anybody else in that room, if there was anybody else thinking of heckling, if I would have been like, where are you from? Oh, what are you? And made fun of them. But now everybody else in that room went, that's the way they deal with heckles here. The show stops. I don't work it in. I don't go, hey, oh, look at me, work in the room. No, the show fucking stops. So 20 minutes later, if there's someone in the fifth row, that's the way they deal with it here. You know the way he deals with it. The show literally stops. And at the end of my show, there was a guy, it was a battery operated. It's sort of a reference to the podcast. There's a guy in the first row. He had a book bag. I didn't even know it. When I was closing and doing a song with the audience, he flipped on his bubble machine and bubbles started going everywhere because I said on the podcast, if you bring a bubble machine into my show, I was joking. And that would have never happened because I would have been too angry the whole show where there would never been a proper time. And when that bubbles started coming out, I was like, oh my God, this would have never happened if we didn't remove the trouble from the audience.
Is so fucking beautiful.
It almost seems like a lie because it's like it ends
too good to be true.
Yeah. So dealing with hecklers, it's
I've always enjoyed watching you. We're gonna watch
real quick.
Yeah.
We always lazily say hecklers, but a friend pointed out there are hecklers, of course, that exist, but overwhelmingly it's not hecklers, it's people talking loud at their tables. That's the true problem.
And people who think they're like participating, you'd be like, oh, I was in the Bahamas last week. Oh, so was I. Well, good for fucking you. Yeah, be quiet.
Go die.
I'm going to wind down here, but I have two more questions for you. We talked about this casually one night. Is it true your tattoo's on the wrong arm? Did you not want your sleeve on your left arm?
I always pictured it being here for some reason. And I did it on Preston and Steve. And I went into the room and I'm talking with them. Meanwhile, the tattoo, Bob, I'm forgetting the name of the tattoo place now, but it's, I wish I could remember it. Put it in post.
Yeah, I can.
He started shaving my arm and I'm talking away to Preston and Steve and the gang, blah, 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 blah. And they're shaving my arm, getting it ready, and then they start doing the tattoo. And then it was like 3 minutes in, I went, oh, I always pictured it on this arm. And I didn't care. I go, well, it's on this arm now. But yeah, it's on the wrong arm.
That's hilarious. And one more final question. Am I still on your phone as Pat motherfucking House?
Yes, you are. And I was going to show you because it's so funny when I have to say it because I do all voice commands usually. But with you, if I'm near other people or like I can't. But it's so funny. I constantly laugh. Even tonight when I called you before the show, I have to say, call Pat motherfucking House.
I love it. You showed me that in your phone years ago, and it still makes me laugh.
I almost took it out, but then I was like, no, I'll leave it in. I'll leave it in. It's got to be that forever.
No, that's a keeper. Todd, thank you so much for doing this with me, man. Thank you. This was a blast, and I know you and I can absolutely do this for 7 more hours, so I will definitely have you back on again. Thank you very much, man.
Thank you, Pat. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. We'll do it again. Is there anything you want to plug here at the very end?
No, just my Act Happy on Netflix. Always happy to have people watch. Happy to have people watching.
Awesome. Todd, thank you for being here. Can't wait to see you in person, man.
Goodbye.